Who doesn't love an SKS? So Atlantic recently posted a restock of some of these 5966s, which happens to be my favorite version of the SKS. I thought I'd give it a try. I was a little nervous about the price point at $750, not including shipping and tax. That's pretty expensive. However, the quality and the grading looked really good on these, so I thought we'd give one a chance. So let's get it on the table and take a look and see if we did any good. Okay, I got it down here on the bench. Let's get in and take a look. I noticed when I picked up the package that it was rattling around in there, which is never really a great sign, but there's no big holes in the package, so hopefully it's doing pretty well. Let's get in, see what we got here, if we're missing any pieces or cracks, dings, dents, what have you. Alright, at this point I'm noticing some rust on the bolt, which is unfortunate. And there's a sling here, which wasn't advertised, but that's always a bonus, I guess. This one seems to be pretty well dried out and full of some sort of mold or dry rot. Let's take another look here and see if we... Okay, so I'm already seeing surface rust all over the bolt, and then... So there's a huge ding here in the wood. Oh, that sucks. Okay, so that's just, man, that's really disappointing. Okay, surface rust here. Man, it's just not really what I was expecting. There's something taped on the grenade launcher here, which just seems to be a piece of paper with the serial number. Man, it's hard to get over this surface rust. I am noticing there's not much cosmoline on the outside, so perhaps someone wiped it off and everything rusted in the interim, but that's disappointing. If we take a look at this side here, we'll do a quick overview. We have some rust on the trigger guard, a little bit of dirt on the butt plate, or on the recoil pad. Sling, kind of cool, pretty funky, dried out, and a little bit rough. But on this side, we have pretty much more of the same. You can see more of the rusting here and here. So up on the gas tube, up on the grenade launcher sight, it's pretty much everywhere. Again, there's distinct lack of cosmoline on here, which is unfortunate. Well, let's take a look at the grenade launching sights. Rusty, but the color is still there, as well as the front sight, so that's good. And let's see, what else we have here? Underneath the magazine, the trigger guard, just surface rust. There's some electro pencil done on the trigger guard, and that has rusted as well. Yikes. So overall, that's just disappointing. These were listed to be in good to very good condition. When you have a dent like that, plus this kind of surface rust, man, that's just really throwing me off at the beginning, and hopefully things get better once we get inside. But this surface rust could have been avoided. The sling is a nice addition. I don't know if that was advertised. I don't think so. It's pretty funky, but we can probably clean that up. So first inspection, first impressions, feeling a little rough about this, especially at the price point. I don't like seeing all that rust, but let's take a look inside the chamber here. Things seem to function as normal, but we'll see once we get in there. At this point, I don't know really what else to say. I just want to get this broken down and cleaned up. Part of me wants to send this back and just not deal with it. But, you know, light surface rust is going to be something they'll say, well, that's just, you know, unavoidable or whatever the case. So I'll just quit complaining and let's get to work on this thing. Alright, so we got all the pieces broken down largely in the big components. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these. Now, I will say that upon breaking this down, it has looked a lot better on the inside. And I'll do a little bit more talking about that in the future here, but let's take a look at some of the pieces here. We have the barreled action. The bluing looks really good. Of course, there's not a lot of cosmoline in here. The night sights still have the paint there, which is good. Bluing on the barrel looks good. The sights on the grenade launcher still there, as well as the front sight. So that's nice. I'll be doing my best not to remove any of that paint during this process. But here's the grenade launcher, front sight post. Here's the other side. Bayonet looks good shape. There's some scratches you can see in the reflection. Go back to this side. Overall, good shape. Under the wood line, no major problems. Here's the import mark, Southern Tactical. It has, when it was done, it was just left bare metal and it started to rust. You see a little bit of cosmoline under here, and that's about it. But overall, it's looking really good. At least in terms of the barreled action. Let's take a look at the stock. Now, it had this sticker on here. I don't know what that's about. But the stock overall looks really good. Really good. No fun surprises in the buttstock. No cigarette butts or anything fun this time. But you'll see one of the issues with the stock is, oh, that looks relatively new. You know, I wonder what that could be. And it seems that the bolt handle fits perfectly in that spot. So I imagine this is from packaging. When these all came together, there was one next to it, and bam. Anyway, we'll continue down here. Up front looks good. Underneath looks good, just a few handling marks and a few inspector marks there. We covered that. There's a couple scratches here and there. This one, good ding there. I might even be able to steam this out a little bit. Might be worth a try. But inside everything looks good. Numbers match on this stock, which is nice. Everything looks good in there. So again, the only real issues are from the ride over here. So that's sort of unfortunate. All right, continuing on that theme, let's take a look at the bolt carrier. We see that this is in fact not cosmoline, this is rust. And there's some good rust in there also. But it does match, which is nice. And nothing detrimental in there anyway. Now, while we're talking about surface rust, here's the issue that I have with this in general. Here's the magazine. You can see here that there's some surface rust. So this was clean, the cosmoline was cleaned off, and where there was exposed metal, it started to rust. And so I hate to see that when either the exporter or the importer, most likely the exporter or whomever was who first imported these and then resold them. But they try and clean it up and make it look nicer for sale. And, you know, this is new rust. This isn't that old. So, you know, if I had to guess, this would be cosmoline was cleaned off and the exposed surfaces started to rust. We can start to see that in some other areas, such as on the gas tube here. Might be hard to tell in this light, but yeah, you can see some active rust there, which is unfortunate and doesn't really need to happen. Now, that aside, the upper handguard here on the gas tube looks to be in great shape. And it also has a parts number or an assembly number here. What I noticed was there was very little cosmoline in the springs. Look, this is how it came out of there. I didn't clean up anything yet. And that is abnormal in my experience. Here's the gas piston. Also, a very distinct lack of cosmoline. Assembly numbers there. And take a look at this. Take a look at the main piston. Look at how bright that is. Something doesn't seem right here. Now on the face of the piston you can see that it was used and it's been polished off. So at some point someone cleaned this up. And I just wish that wouldn't have been the case. Leave the cosmoline on there until it gets to the end user so that we can clean it up and we don't have this surface rust problem. Speaking of, here is there's the bolt cover. You can see, same thing. Trying to get it to show you in a good light, but where there's exposed metal, it's all started to rust, which, you know, isn't a big deal. It's just annoying, to say the least. This one did come with a cleaning rod, which is nice. So that's good. And we can see the trigger pack here. Also, not much cosmoline in there at all. And then, of course, the rust starting to form here. And you can see, let's see if I can get where this was electro-penciled. Where this was electro-penciled, you can see those numbers starting to rust there. So, again, unfortunate. Not terrible to fix, but unfortunate. And we have the bolt here, which I need to take apart. And let's see, the butt pad, the recoil pad. Recoil pad's in good shape. Not too dried out. Not too beat up. Some genuine Yugoslavian dirt right there. Other than that, it looks to be fine. Now let's get to the sling that came with this. The sling that came with this is pretty interesting. First of all, it's dried out to no end. But you can see some assembly numbers here, which is nice. Some rust on the buckle. And I thought there was another marking somewhere, possibly here. I'll see if I can find it once we clean it up. And it looks like some white mold here. That's typical for storage with this kind of stuff. This end is pretty beat up. Look at that. right? But I don't remember these being advertised with the sling, so this could be a bonus. And in addition to the leather retention band here, it's seen better days. There was no button with this, and it was tied with this piece of copper wire. And I think I will keep that on there. The gas block looks good. No issues there. You can see here, let's see if I can get this even in focus. Anyway, well, you might have to take my word for it, but the gas port looks really good. Okay, real quick, I just want to go over some of the tools I use. First and foremost is a good screwdriver set. I like this one from Brownells, but you can get an entry-level set for around 40 bucks, anywhere on Amazon or any of those places. Good mallet for whacking stuff. Clean and brush, right? Use a toothbrush, whatever you want. I really like this brass pick because I can resharpen this tip and I don't have to worry about scratching any of the bluing. These dental picks are nice, but I don't like to use them too often because you can scratch through that bluing, but they do have their place. Of course, a punch set is always good to have. And when it comes to metal, for me it's mineral spirits if we're talking about Cosmoline. It just melts right off of there, which is great. I don't like to use mineral spirits on the wood because it just dries everything out so much. So if I do have to get it on the wood, or if it accidentally does, I get some boiled linseed oil on there, or whatever your preferred wood oil is. Now, some people ask me about this. How do I clean up the gun stocks that are soaked with Cosmoline? I use Goo Gone, or there's a whatever version, Gunk Gone, or whatever the other one is, and I don't let it sit on there too long, but it doesn't harm the wood and it works really well. It just melts that Cosmoline right off, or any sticky residue like from stickers or anything left over. For the rubber butt pad this time, on this Yugo 5966, I used some silicone lubricant just to protect that so it wouldn't eat away at the rubber. Some penetrating oil is always good for something that's stuck, such as this bolt, the firing pin, the locking piece for the extractor is jammed in there, and so it's going to go and soak there for a little while. Now when it comes to the leather, I really like this Picard leather dressing. It's done really well for me, and a little bit goes a long way, and it cleans up some stiff and old leather really well. When it comes to new leather, I like to use a neat's foot oil or something, but when it's used older leather to bring it back to life, I really like this Picard leather dressing. And then of course your grease or oil of choice when you're reassembling. Let's see. Also, I had showed this. Also, for cleaning the metal parts, you could use 4/0 steel wool or a brass brush or anything like that. I like this Big 45 Frontier metal cleaner. You can get these anywhere, and they're like a couple dollars a piece. You can cut little sections off, you can run it through the bore, you can do whatever, but this really takes off some light surface rust really easily and doesn't affect the bluing, so that's nice. Okay, so let's see if we can salvage this sling. You can see that the buckle's rusted. I can fix that, but there's some either mold or dry rot. Looks like mold, white mold there. But some oxidation from the copper button replacement. But we have some markings on here. Let's see if we can see this. before we clean it up. Looks like an S-8 something something 000. So let's see if we can get, I mean, it's intact. Of course it's missing the button and it's pretty damaged there. And the keeper is almost done. But all right, so this is where I like to use the Picard leather dressing. That's this guy here. And I just take an old t-shirt or something. I save all these. Shout out to Fat Elvis Records. Are they still in business? Out in Knoxville, Tennessee, anyway. Had some fun with you guys. All right, so I just take a piece of t-shirt and get a little bit in here. And what I like about this stuff is that, I'll use this as an example, that's way too much, you can see, but you can spread it out over the whole thing. And what it'll do is it'll help clean off the dirt and the mold and everything else. And I normally put it just on the the skin layer, the outer layer of the leather rather than the innards, but this all needs to be cleaned up. So, and it won't darken the leather, it will soften it, but as you'll see when we're finished, it does a really good job. I mean, this is hard, and you can see how it's formed into the shape that it was, so it's really dried out. It just needs some hydration. Now for parts like this that basically it's holding a memory of where it was when it dried out, this part right here, I'll go ahead and put some of this on here and let it sit for a little bit before I try to do anything else, because if I don't, it'll end up splitting. So if I want to just bend this, just wanted to bend it flat just to work on it, it would probably crack and split somewhere along there. So I'll put a little bit of this dressing on there and let it sit, and then I'll come back to it. All right, so while we're letting this hydrate, I'll go ahead and say that my favorite leather conditioner of all time was the Ozzie Smith leather conditioner. And but they don't make this anymore, so this is more of a collector's item. But man, I use this since I was a kid. Got this from my father, and we just used it on everything, and it was really great. So a big shout out down to the folks in STL, and here's Ozzie Smith doing a backflip. And I also see that the Picard is made in Green Bay, Wisconsin, so we're really doing some Midwestern representation here today. Okay, so this is just 10 minutes later, and we can already see that it's beginning to hydrate, and the flexibility is coming back, and this is going to end up being a usable sling, which is nice. So remember before, just a few minutes ago, it was all covered in that mold, and it was just very brittle. Especially this piece, the keeper, was incredibly brittle, and I didn't think was going to make it, but we can get it back on there. Of course, one of these seams has busted, but this will end up being okay. So, of course, this is way too much dressing to put on there, but this hasn't seen any hydration in who knows how long. So, I always put too much on there, and then I go through and wipe it all off after about 10 minutes. And then let it sit for a little while, and if I need to come back and do it again, repeat that process 1 or 2 more times, then so be it. But as you can see, this is going to end up being a pretty good sling, so no complaints on my end. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the buttstock. Now, there's not a whole lot of cosmoline on here, but there's quite a bit that's impregnated in there, and so right now I just want to get the surface stuff off. First and foremost, there's this sticker here, right? And for a person that is interested in history and collects everything that they can about a historical rifle in this case, the question becomes, is it part of this rifle's history? Well, the answer is yes. No matter what happens, it's a part of this history. But is it a part of the history that's worth remembering or that we choose to remember? Right? So even if this is just an inventory number, whether that's 2 6s, 2 4s, or just some lightning bolts, is it worth preserving that sticker? In my case, I'm just going to pull it off and put it on with my receipt, and then I'll know it was there. But, you know, that's up to the end user. But I guess that question of what is history and what is important to remember is always up to the individual. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and try to clean off a little bit of this surface cosmoline. And as I had mentioned before, sometimes I use the Goo Gone when it is just the surface stuff like this. Give it just a little bit of a spray and it cleans it right up, because it'll remove the cosmoline, but it'll also remove any other residue that is left on there, from dirt to sticker residue or just anything sticky, which is really nice. And it doesn't totally dehydrate the wood. Now, of course, when I'm done with this, I go over it with some linseed oil just because, but I haven't had any issues with it doing any damage to the stock. But again, take that for what it's worth, but it's what I tend to use on situations like this, and it's worked pretty well for me. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of this stock. And you can see it did that little patch pretty well. And if we come over here and do a little bit more before I try and mess with that dent there, it does do a pretty good job of cleaning this up with minimal effort. So that's pretty nice. Actually, this stock is going to turn out pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the rest of this, and I'll show you the end result. Okay, so now we got the stock pretty much cleaned up, most of the dirt and cosmoline off of it, except for what's inside there, and I'm going to save that for a little bit later. But my main concern is going to be this fresh divot right here, and I'm convinced that it sat next to another one in storage or on the ride over here, and just because it's the perfect size and fit with that bolt right there. So I'm gonna try and see if I can steam any of this out and if it'll pop back up at all. So give this a go and just see if it'll work. Wow, that's amazing. And it's already because it's such a fresh dent, it's already popping out of there. And look at this. That's awesome. So hopefully we can save this. Because without that major dent there and a couple scratches on the other side, this would almost be an excellent stock. And I think an example overall, if it wasn't for that rust in this. But, you know, if it wasn't for this, that, and the other thing, it would be great. It's not too bad. Yeah. It's not great, though, either. So, let's see if we can get a little bit more out of there. Try and get a little on the top here because it's sort of wrapped around the edge there. Come on, baby. It is helping get some of the cosmoline out of there also. That might be pretty close to what we can get from this thing. So I'm going to work on it a little bit more. Let me give you a close up here. I'll work on it a little bit more, see if I can get anything out of there. But it's better, but it's not perfect. I might try a couple of these over here also. But that's it. I mean, you look at this stock overall, it's in great shape. Okay, so just as a demonstration, I would normally do this over my work sink. But, so when it comes to the metal, again, I'm going to use mineral spirits, and for me, it just makes the process so much easier. So as an example, here's the just go like this, brush it off, and it just melts away. So that makes it incredibly simple, in my opinion. And again, I just do it over a work sink and just spray it down, scrub it off, and that's it. Keep in mind that it will strip some paint off of some things. So when I do this, I am gonna cover up the grenade launcher markings as well as the night sights. That is a phosphorus paint, and it does have some cosmoline on it, so I'll do that individually so that I don't remove all of that paint. But it's really straightforward. Just spray it down, wipe it off, brush it out, and now of course after that the metal is going to be extremely dry. So once I do the entire piece, after that I will just go through and I'll let everything, all of the metal parts, soak in some oil. And I usually use CLP just because, and I just spray everything down, let it soak for a little bit, and rehydrate that metal. So at this point we have these items degreased and the cosmoline removed, which leaves us to deal with a lot of this surface rust. So as you can see here, quite a bit of surface rust. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and deal with that now. What I like to do is, these parts are nice and dry. I'll use some of this Bore 45 or Big 45 type of, it looks like a Scotch-Brite pad or something like that, but it is really, really fine, and it doesn't hurt the bluing as long as you don't go crazy on it. So here, I'll show you how some of that works here real quick. Take this and just kind of go over it and then wipe those particles off so I don't just grind them in. And you can see that starts to remove quite a bit of the surface rust. So I'm going to go ahead and go over all of these parts. Okay, so at this point I have the action cleaned up for the most part. All the cosmoline's off. Majority of the rust is off, and I spent way too much time with a little pick pulling out a bunch of the little details. And anyway, it is time to see what's going on in this barrel. When I look down it, in the bore there's a big glob of something, and I am hoping that that is just cosmoline. Let's give this a shove through and see what we can find. It's bad, look at that patch. It's not bad at all. All right, so let me see if we can take a look down there real quick. So with one patch in there, this is what we're looking like. It is almost immaculate. See a little couple of particles in there, but I know that'll pull right out. So this is the best part of this thing. All right, so all of the major components are back together. We got the trigger group, we got the bolt, We have barreled actions all nice and lubed up, and so are the other metal pieces. Now, of course, I tend to extremely over oil everything because I use mineral spirits to clean it up, so it just dries it out quite a bit. And so I like to get some moisture back in there, the right kind, and let the parts absorb some of this oil. So a couple things real quick. Why do I take so much time to get in the little crevices and all those little spots that, you know, you'll never really see? One is functionality, but two is because the truth is I'd probably never be back in here this deep. I know I'll probably never take the trigger pack apart again, and you know, things like that. So if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it all the way, and then I know it's done, and it's done correctly. So all this is looking good. The best part is the bore, and so I did notice, of course, now that we have everything taken apart, let's see if I can get this in here, that this barrel is a replacement barrel. So it's not matching, which sucks, but everything else matches minus the barrel. You know, it is what it is, and here we are. So this came out pretty good. We have, of course, you have the night sight there, front sight, standard post sight here, night sight, grenade launcher sight, all the paint still on there. Had to be extra cautious because I screwed myself the last time. And the gas block looks good. Everything looks fine. So no real complaints there. No surprises either, which is always a good thing. So the only thing left to do is get this all back together and show you the finished product. Alright, so I love to give a few hard copy reference materials in case anyone's interested in adding them to their library. I've mentioned these once or twice in previous videos, so I'm going to make this really quick. However, to start off, we have the AK and SKS guide by Patrick Sweeney, and this is just sort of a modern interpretations of it and some gunsmithing tips and a few things of how to turn them into or compete with them as a fighting rifle. Now, I'm most excited about this, the Collector's Guide to the SKS, which was recently published by George Lehman. And this is really, really nice because there's quite a few color photographs in here. There's history, there's some elaboration on the different markings, the different variations, and some explanations of those markings and what they mean, where they came from, as well as the different variations, and as I said, some history. So this is a good resource that came out, I believe, last year, 2023, and this is marked as $48.99, but I know you can find it cheaper online, as I sure did, and anyway, it's worth adding to your library. Now, I love the For Collectors Only series. Now, this one, since we're talking about the Yugo 5966, the Serbian and Yugoslavian Mauser rifles, has a little section on the bayonets and some things specific to the 5966, A1, which is this rifle, and a couple other things. So now this is out of print, and these have gotten pretty expensive. So, but if you can find one, it's pretty good. And there's a lot of other interesting information in there as well. And staying on the For Collectors Only series, the SKS carbine is really nice book at a reasonable price. Now, I believe these are still in publication, so you can find these at a reasonable price. Now, once they go out of print, they tend to jump up in price pretty quick. But anyway, this is a good reference. In terms of some history, a little bit of history, some production numbers, and disassembly guides, parts numbers, serial numbers, and different variations, and that sort of thing. And speaking of, I have an extra copy of this, so let's do a giveaway. Yay! So as I mentioned, I was digging through my resource library, and I have an extra copy of the SKS carbine, and I thought it would be better suited to someone who doesn't have one, and they could use it. So we're going to give that away. So let me know if you're interested in that one. And since we're giving stuff away, how about I give away a couple of t-shirts. This one has our logo on the front. If you're not familiar with Midwestern, that's our organization. It's a charitable organization, and we focus on furthering the American shooting culture through various educational means. Anyway, this is a large, and it's got our logo here. It's blank on the back, and it's a nice moisture wicking type material. So we got that one. This one, if you're an extra large or more of a white t-shirt for summer, this is a nice cotton, and this is made by my friend Cody, and I'll put his link in. He makes all kinds of good stuff. He's made some hats and all kinds of things for me. But this is an extra large, and if you would like any of these items, put it in the comments which one you would like, and I'll do a random drawing, and I'll throw some stickers in and stuff like that. So that brings me to my overall analysis of the 5966 from Atlantic Firearms. These were listed at $750 plus shipping and tax. So that's a very quick and easy answer for me, and that answer is no. I cannot justify that price point, even at today, to add one of these models to my collection. Now that's just me personally. That's the thing, is I don't need to add one and that price range can be better spent on quite a few other things. So especially if you're on a budget for a hobby, you know, it's difficult to justify that amount, in my opinion. Although this is a pretty good example, it could have been an excellent example, but in my opinion, it's just not worth it. It comes down to, also, in addition to the cost, there was the cleanup time. And that's a matter of what is your time worth. I know what my time is worth. And this will be finding a new home with another collector. So, and that's the beauty of this hobby, is that I can take this, and since it doesn't fit my collection, I can find someone who will appreciate this, and they can justify that price point for something in their collection, which is great. And we can make a trade, and we can both be happy. So at the end of the day, this needs to find a new home. At the price point, it's just not worth it for me. Also, I still have this guy from Hunter's Lodge. Say what you want about Hunter's Lodge. I love the look and the feel of this one, and for almost $300 less, it's going to be staying with me. So that's going to do it for the SKS video. If you're interested in those giveaway items, leave me a comment and I'll do a quick video on that giveaway. Otherwise, as always, I appreciate you watching. Until next time, keep your fingers off the trigger. We'll see you later.